Came to Arizona when I was about 4 years old, and to South Phoenix I was about 8. And growing up in South Phoenix was an interesting experience. To say the least, it was a community that had been designed to separate the races. I can say perhaps the haves from the have-nots. That meant no running water, no telephone, no electricity, and of course that was no radio or television. We read week-old copies of the Chicago Tribune or Pittsburgh Courier, comic books, the Bible, of course, and we listened to my father tell once upon a time stories that always ended with a moral, and the moral of that story is, when you talk about rap and nursery rhymes, well, we thought the signifying monkey was a nursery rhyme. Our parents, however, were real with us. There were 3 girls in the family. They valued an education, believed in upward mobility. We had 2 brothers who were older. They were both in the war. We were told that Cinderella and Santa Claus were fairy tales. There was no Prince Charming. You're going to have to work for a living, and so you need to get an education. Santa Claus, they were Santa Claus. They put the presents under the trees. It was a matter of being country when country wasn't cool. In spite of the history of being told what you could or could not do because of your gender, ethnicity, race, poverty or wealth of your family, we were taught a little differently. We were rich in many aspects, perhaps not material things, but we had family, and that meant unity. We were kind of rural, and that meant irrigation. You could turn a head of water, milk a cow, fix a flat tire, and work on your car. Our father taught us, girls, whatever you're physically able to do, you can do it. So as far as those limitations were concerned, there were no limits put on us as girls. 1953, schools were still segregated. It was time to go to high school. I had one river to cross, the Salt River. It was usually dry. But there were 2 high schools on the other side of that river, and I needed to make a choice to get to one of them. I had the choice of going to Carver High School, which was the African American school, or possibly get into Phoenix Vocational Technical High School. It was integrated. I had to take a test to get into Phoenix Vocational Tech. Come September, I, along with 5 of my classmates, were accepted, but only 2 of us enrolled. I welcomed the opportunity, met the challenge. I participated in sports, athletics. Of course, tennis and golf were always off limits to African American because tennis courts and the golf courses were at the country club, and they were segregated. I have to digress for a moment and say I remember the counters in Woolworth when they closed to African Americans. As children, our parents would take us downtown Saturday morning. We'd go to Woolworth. We'd get hot dogs and sodas. And then my mother started to make lunches, basket lunches. She said, we're going to start going to the park. So we questioned why. As mothers do, she said, well, the food is not good for you. We think she protected us. She did not want us to know the harsh reality of what had really happened there. So we began going to the park, having picnic lunches. The one thing I recall about my parents was that it's not the place, it's not Arizona, Alabama, Mississippi, it's the people. And they had us to live with the knowledge of knowing that there are good people wherever you go. And so you treat people, everybody, with respect and dignity the way you want to be treated. You cannot control what others say to you or what they do to you, but you can control your response to that, your reaction to that. So we grew up knowing that there are good people, no matter what color they are. But we also grew up learning to protect ourselves from slurs or whatever was hurled our way because of our self-esteem and the sense of self-worth that we had. I learned early on that your attitude determines your altitude. I had an occasion, the only work you could find to do was basically housework. And so I worked in a home. There came an occasion when we were discussing how we were going to clean the floors. And I politely informed the lady of the house that I did not scrub floors on my knees. I lost a job that day. It was a much needed job. But I gained something else, a realization that if I had that attitude, that I'd better stay in school. I needed an education. It was so positively reinforced for me by Dr. Maya Angelou. She came to Phoenix one year to do a lecture. After her lecture, we were invited to go up to her room for dinner and to talk. And we gathered around Dr. Angelou to take a picture. She was seated, and I was going to kneel beside her. And she said, "Oh, no." Oh, she would not have it. She said, "Oh, no, you stand. And you stand like you got starch in your back." Oh, that advice I took to heart. And it was so rewarding to have her tell me that, to stand for whatever I was proud of being, and that was a black female. My first job at the district office was executive director of school community relations. Well, that was like a PR job. And what we did most of the time was go from school to school and settle disputes. It was challenging, and I often worked with the police, community organizations. It was bringing together, trying to close the gap, trying to connect the school and the home and save the youngsters in the middle. Then came the deputy superintendent. First female, obviously the first African American. Enjoyed it immensely, served under a wonderful superintendent, was able to work in the community, continue to give back, which we were taught as children.